what's going on? So today I'm finally back in the garage after a little bit of a break. Lately I've just been really busy with a bunch of non-car related things, but that's life, I guess. The weather's starting to get cold up here in the north, so it's gonna be my #1 priority to get some heat in here in the garage, just so I can work on this thing all winter long. It may delay me a little bit in terms of working on this thing, but obviously in the long run, it'll be well worth the effort. So today will basically be a continuation of the work I did on the floor pans a couple of videos ago. More specifically, I want to start addressing the underside of the car, the subframe rails, the pinch welds, the torque boxes, all that kind of stuff. It'll probably take me a decent amount of time just because of all the work that's involved with the underside of this car. It's something I definitely want to take my time with. You know, I want to do it right and do it up to a standard that, you know, at the end of the day I'll be happy with. Keep in mind I have a full-time job, so that definitely slows things down a bit, but you know, I'm happy to work on this thing any chance I get. You know, life things, man. So where do I begin? Basically the underside of this car, more specifically the subframe rails, the pinch welds, the torque boxes, they all need a fair bit of work. Basically the underside of this car is my least favorite part of this project, hands down. You know, in the past this car's been heavily modified. It's gone through several different engine swaps and, you know, just a whole lot of work in general. Naturally, the car's been on a lot of lifts. It's seen a lot of jack stands, definitely more than your average car. Somewhere down the line, the car's also been, you know, lifted up improperly numerous amounts of times, as you've seen in my previous videos, and as you're gonna see in the upcoming videos. Which leads me to my next point is you haven't seen the worst of it yet, so brace yourselves. But yeah, it's definitely fixable. It's just going to require a little bit more time and effort and patience. A lot more time and effort and patience. Having said that, I mean, these cars do typically suffer from, you know, damaged pinch welds, torque boxes, subframe rails, and that's just because people use those as lifting points when they do any type of work on these cars. And it wasn't exactly the greatest design for that purpose from the factory. I mean, if you take your time, you can definitely avoid all this trouble, no doubt. So these cars here are a unibody design. They lack a full-length frame rail that would typically run from the front of the car to the back of the car. Instead, you get the front frame and the rear frame tied into the chassis or the body of the car itself. So what happens is the chassis actually tends to flex and twist in the middle. So what you can do is you can pick up a set of subframe connectors which will tie in the front subframe to the rear subframe of the car, and as a result it'll make it much more stiff and rigid. And I know for a fact on these cars it's a night and day difference. If you have a Mustang like this, it's definitely a worthy mod. It should be one of the first things you do to the car. So this car already has subframe connectors already installed on it, but I'm going to be removing them because in order to gain access and start fixing the subframe rails in the front, it's got to be removed, and B, they're pretty beat up. They're half length and they're not the square tube design, like the full length square tube design that I wanted, so yeah, they gotta go. So start by cutting out the old subframe connectors out of this car, and once they're out I'll be able to move up to the front subframe rails, and that'll be on the next video. So yeah, let's get started. Off the passenger side to release the front of the subframe connector from the frame rail. So it looks like the bracket is just bolted through the frame rail, but then again it's also welded on the sides and the top of the bracket, which is going to be a pain to get off since it's so tight up here. So to make things a little easier, I figured I'd just cut right through the tab because I won't be reusing these connectors anyways. And then I'll go back and I'll clean it up by removing the little tabs afterwards. So this is the passenger side subframe rail, and as you can see, the middle of it has been pushed in like I've never seen it before. I can sit here all day and debate how the hell they got so bad. Bottle jack comes to mind, something with a small contact point that doesn't distribute the load too well. Either that or it went rock crawling. Definitely my absolute least favorite part of this car. Definitely fixable though, and I'll show you how I'm gonna do it in my next video. So the front of each subframe connector is now cut off, and basically any tension between the connector and the frame rail or the body of the car is now released. All that's left to do is basically cut the tabs off the back and remove the old subframe connectors. This is the rear lower control arm mounts. Basically the torque box, the rear torque box right here. This whole part here is also a little crushed in from jack stand and lift damage, so this whole thing here is messed up. This here is really common, and this as well. Yeah, I'm not going to go through all this trouble when we leave the torque boxes like this, so I'm going to have to address that later on. But this is what I want to get at. This might be actually a little easier than the front side because it's not as much to cut, but I'm just going to take my saw and just cut this right off and then do it on the back side too. See, there's the passenger side one. So it's like a little bracket that's welded onto the rear frame. And what it does is it connects the rear frame all the way to the front subframe. And the middle is basically just like a floor pan with like a brace. So these connect the two together and stiffen up the car substantially. So this is one of the first mods every Mustang owner should do. The older SM95s and Fox bodies and whatnot really benefit from subframe connectors. There's the driver's side subframe connector completely cut off. Just have these two brackets to grind and cut off later on. First side's done, gotta do the other side now. Here are the old subframe connectors. Just thought I'd show them a little more up close. As you can see here, the tabs that were welded onto the subframe of the car, I just kind of sawed them right off, and then basically had to go back under the car and cut off all the remaining tabs, which proved to be a little bit of a pain just because how tight it is under there. I don't have a lift, so it's kind of hard to get certain tools under there. So those are the old ones there. I'll show you guys for comparison the new ones. These are Maximum Motorsports XL subframe connectors. You can see the big, you can see how much longer, how much bigger they are. The old ones are basically like a half length. These ones go right from the firewall all the way to the back. These are much better built, much stronger looking, and just overall much nicer, I think. A couple of other things that I've noticed when looking at these floor pans, now that I have the subframe connectors out, are these high spots. There's a couple of them, right here, right there, and right there. You can kind of see it in the video. I'm not sure how well you're going to see it, but basically they're in a complete, they form like a line, and that's just because it was from the subframe connector that I had, that the car had previously. Basically it was pushed up against the floor pan and it was kind of bending the floor pan up, just right here. I'm going to heat it up a little bit, knock these high areas down. Shouldn't be a big deal. So in order to do this, you're going to need a pretty complex set of tools. You're going to need your hammer and this specialty floor pan straightening apparatus. This is the passenger side rear floor pan. It is the worst side of the two. I'll get a better angle. Oh, there you go, right there. I'm gonna do more of the same thing I did on the other side.
This is a Chuki Beats production.
Alright, so the rear floor pans are pretty much done for the most part. Pretty easy fix. Just gonna keep moving on, mainly to the front frame rails. That's the next thing on the list. I'm gonna start by cutting these channels out, and it'll finally be time to address my biggest issue with this car. Should be interesting.